Okay, chapter 1.5. So far we've looked at how to obtain samples. Now we're going to look at some problems that might arise in sampling. Okay, if the results of the sample are not representative of the population, then the sample has bias. There's three sources of bias we're going to talk about: sampling bias, non-response bias, and response bias. Sampling bias means that the technique used to obtain the individuals to be in the sample tends to favor one part of the population over another. Undercoverage occurs when the proportion of one segment of the population is lower in a sample than it is in the population. For example, the most classic case of this was in 1936 when the Literary Digest did a survey to see if they could predict who was going to win the presidential election. And their sample they got from telephone directories and automobile owner lists. Well, in 1936, the only people that had telephones and automobiles were wealthy people. So therefore, the poor people suffered severe undercoverage. And as a result, they predicted that Landon would beat Roosevelt. But have you ever heard of President Landon? No, they were wrong, right? They had severe sampling bias. Then we have non-response bias. Okay, all surveys will suffer from non-response to a certain extent. It exists when individuals selected to be in the sample who do not respond have different opinions from those who do. Okay, non-response can be improved through the use of callbacks or rewards and incentives. And then we have response bias, which exists when the answers on a survey do not reflect the true feelings of the respondent. So here's some types of response bias. Interviewer error. Okay, a trained interviewer is essential to obtain accurate information from a survey. A skilled interviewer can elicit responses from individuals and make the interviewee feel comfortable enough to give truthful responses. Okay, for example, a good interviewer could get an honest answer to a question like, have you ever cheated on a test? Okay, another type of response bias is misrepresented answers. Okay, some survey questions result in responses that misrepresent facts or are just flat out lies. For example, if you want someone to self-report their salary or ask how many push-ups they can do in 1 minute, right? People might inflate a little bit. Okay, wording of questions. The way a question is worded can lead to response bias in a survey, so questions must always be asked in a balanced form. In other words, avoid the yes-no questions for one thing. Instead of just saying, do you oppose the reduction of estate taxes? You would ask, do you support or oppose the reduction of estate taxes? Okay. Also, don't be vague when you're wording your question. Don't simply say, how much do you study? Be specific. How much do you study for statistics every day, every week, right? Things like that. And then the ordering of the questions or words. So a lot of surveys will rearrange the order of the questions so that responses are not affected by prior questions. So we've got non-sampling errors. These are errors that result from sampling bias, right? Non-response bias, response bias, or data entry error. Okay, such errors could also be present in a complete census of the population. Sampling error is an error that results from using a sample to estimate information about a population. This type of error occurs because a sample gives incomplete information about a population. Okay? All right. That's the end of 1.5. Let me know if you have questions.